Fixed bayonets, comrades. This is Chief Guard of the Republic Radio Show with your co-hosts Mike Tuman and Paul Burvid every Saturday noon to 1 normal time. But for the baseball game, we're doing noon to 2 today. And we're out of the Fox River Valley Media Network, WRMN 1410 AM. You can also stream us on WRMN1410.com or pick us up on the WRMN YouTube channel. Our call-in number here is 847-931-1410, and our text number is 505-926-1410. So, hi, Paul. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm in reasonably good health, even though my air conditioner, the blower motor for my forced air furnace decided to give up the ghost 2 days ago.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was just talking about it with Diane. I said, you know what, I should really replace the furnace. And she goes, why? It's still working. I'm like, eh.
Do you know two things that I know for sure?
Yeah.
The furnace only goes out in the winter and the air conditioning only goes out in the summer. Did you know that?
I know. I think I could, it's definitely the motor. So it's pretty easy pulling the motor out and then going to the appliance store and buying another motor.
My new theory, though, is to always try to have, as an emergency backup, a window air conditioner if you can get one. You know what I'm saying?
Luckily, I had purchased one of those portable rolling ones that looks like one of the rolling radiator heaters.
Yeah.
And I also had a window air conditioner that I purchased for my daughter when she was living in Ukrainian Village for her apartment there. She didn't need it anymore, so I was able to hook those up to keep the house reasonably comfortable, but I still need to fix that other thing. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, and this it's strange, you wouldn't think that it had national defense implications, but I think it does. It's health, the people's health, and specifically things that are out there that destroy the health, the actual health, not short term, but maybe long term, the actual health of our fighting age males, draftable fighting age males. I was looking up 1941. They said about 57% of the draftable age males were fit for service. I still think that's kind of low for a country that doesn't have a lot of starvation, that had pretty good medical care. To only have 57% of your draftable population fit for service is pretty bad. But now I look it up and it's 23%, only 23%. So less than 1 in 4, 4 guys are standing there and only one of them is going to be able to join the military. The other 3, they won't make it for physical reasons. Maybe some for mental reasons, but mostly it's physical reasons. And what brings it up is some of our celebrities, in order to have these really cut bodies and to physically look good on the outside, to look real good and be bulked up, take some designer drugs to shortcut stuff, and specifically like steroids. So anabolic steroids, which is, from what I understand, it's synthetic testosterone, which is the male hormone. For when you hit puberty and everything, you start bulking up. You grow facial hair and everything else. Testosterone, the male thing, you put on extra muscle. That's naturally occurring in your body. But what happens with synthetics when they go into your body? I mean, it has one effect where it helps them bulk up. It helps you recover from workouts and everything. Work out a little harder, get a little bigger, and it's a vicious cycle. You look good on the outside, but then maybe even like 40 years down the road, when you should be living your best life. Well, but living your golden years. You have, you don't have to work anymore. You got some free time, and all of a sudden your body falls apart. And you look good on the outside, but now all of a sudden the inside's falling apart. And it wasn't worth it. You know. But the other thing that does is I think it puts a stress on our medical system. Because now all of a sudden you need medical care. You need more medical care than the average person. So this is putting a strain on our own medical system, which again decreases our readiness. What do you think, Paul?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that it adversely affects everything in the population, and and you're right. It doesn't help the military, and leads to other things too,
So
leads to other chronic conditions that are no good.
I've seen some, you know, back in the day, you have. I'm sure everyone's familiar with people like like Honey Boo Boo and these little girls that do all the dancing and everything. They're walking down the runway, the child beauty pageants. At the same time, they have these pre-adolescent boys working out massively with weights and everything and bulking up. And I have to believe, I have no proof, and I'm not accusing anyone, that sometimes you get the little league parents. And if people don't know what I mean by little league parents, is like the parents is trying to relive their glory years through their child and to give them all what they think are advantages. And I think they pump these kids up with some of these drugs. And then that's fine, but all of a sudden you got this kid that was all pumped up, and sure, at like 10 years old, he's maybe 5 foot tall and he's all pumped up, and now he's 20 years old and he's still 5 foot tall because all those steroids have stunted his height growth. It's like, okay, the bone, when that goes in, it's like the bones are done growing now. Let's go on to the muscle. I see that with the puppy that I have, is like his bones are growing faster than the rest of them. He's just stretching out. But if you put a stop to his bones growing, then he's going to go. Everything else is going to go there. So that takes another person out of the draftable age, and I have to look at. It's a bad way of saying. It's a bad way of saying it, but I have to look at our draftable, fighting age males as our ammunition. How much ammunition do we have in this country? And if you're out there with a 6-shooter and no reloads, and you're up against a guy with a Thompson and a 100-round barrel, you're kind of intimidated, and he's less intimidated by you. Right? So if our competitors are able to keep a higher military fighting age rate there, they have more ammunition, and they're less intimidated and less our castle walls aren't thick enough to give them second thoughts about invasion or taking us over or going at it with us. So what do you think of that thing that it's their right to do it because it's a victimless crime. It's just an anabolic steroid. It's not an addictive drug, blah blah blah, but it's their choice, their body, their choice. They could do what they want. So why should it be?
I've known people that associated with people like that, and they all had problems with their kidneys and livers, and it led to other things. So I think if their long-term thing is ill health, I don't think that's a victimless crime.
They say it's their health, right? So
yeah, but it falls on other people.
Yeah, they start flooding the medical system.
Right.
All right. So now you have people there that need medical care, and it reduces the amount of medical care that's available for the general public, for your average guy that doesn't do the steroids, that doesn't smoke, that doesn't drink, that eats a reasonable, has a reasonable diet and something, and he gets the big C, or he has, he gets, Lyme disease or something like that, something that he couldn't foresee or plan against, right? And he can't get the level of service the level of care that he needs, because there's a whole ward filled with guys whose bones have fallen apart, whose kidneys have failed, whose livers have failed, and who have heart problems, but they looked good for a while.
Well, it reminds me of that old skit from Saturday Night Live when Billy Crystal used to imitate Ricardo Montalban, and it is better to look good than to feel good. That's a joke. I mean, it doesn't matter how you look. You could look perfectly good and be 6 feet under. It matters how you feel, and I think we should have people more concentrate on their general health and physical fitness rather than some definition. I mean, I used to know people that used to get into with these bodybuilders, and these people, they would get tanned and then they would do these competitions. And who does that matter to? I have a friend who's got relatives that go all over the country and they run. Okay. Well, that's nice. Okay. But I knew a lot of runners, particularly people I worked at with the state's attorney's office, that were very young and were looking at knee and hip replacements. Some of them were women, and they couldn't get it until after they had a child, because it doesn't work that way. There's a whole other issue here, and it's not a good thing to run yourself into the ground till you die. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
you can't tell that to the Army.
right. You should do it all in moderation, though.
Yes. Yes. So everyone has their hobbies and everything. And that would seem very strange to put limitations on people. Well, we don't want you, and this is like a nanny state. It's okay to jog, but we're outlawing marathons.
Right.
And there's guys that are marathon runners, they never have the hip and the knee replacements. And that's either through genetics or through their style of running. Right?
Right.
A lot of people, cheap shoes, their style of running is wrong. But the other thing, that running, going out running, normal exercising, right, without the help of steroids and everything, without doping and anything like that, that's a good thing. It gives you the endorphins. It keeps you healthy. If you stopped running because you're afraid your knees and your hips are going to give out, and then all of a sudden you put on 60, 70, 80 extra pounds, that's going to have the same effect. It's going to put pressure on your back, pressure on your knees, pressure on your ankles, your feet. Your feet go flat, then you got back pain. So I'm not against exercising. I'm not even against heavy weightlifting. What I'm against is the shortcuts that these guys take that cause a chemical change in their body and cause their organs to have to work overtime, which they weren't designed to do, to work overtime to rid themselves of the impurities, the poisons that leaves over in the system. And when that shuts down, now you can't take care of yourself. That's why in the military, why they don't specifically random test for anabolic steroids. Like we have the urinalysis, and they're testing for things like cocaine, cannabis, heroin, other drugs like that, methamphetamines. They're testing for that stuff, but they don't test for the steroids. They don't test for anabolic steroids. Unless I'm a commander of a unit and I look at this guy and it's like writing a DUI, all right? So you have to articulate that you're seeing stuff like, well, the guy started going bald at an early age. Then he got really bad acne, right? And he went from a 52A cup to a 54 double D, you know, because these are like the side effects of some of that stuff. And then you have to say, well, I have reasonable suspicion, but by this guy's behavior and his physical changes that he's taking anabolic steroids. Then you could do a urinalysis on him. Now you got the anabolic steroids, but you, just like a DUI, you have to have reasonable suspicion of that use. And the other thing I looked up is, like, you know, the Navy takes it serious on a point now where if you want to be part of the Navy SEALs or a special operations unit, that they're going to test you for the steroids. They don't want you. Well, if you go long term, one of the things is people have an emotional withdrawal from this. It's emotionally addictive. You know, like playing solitaire on your computer or playing solitaire. It becomes emotionally addictive. It gives you those endorphins to fill the hand. These guys go work out, and then they measure their biceps, and they're like, "Look, I added a millimeter of diameter today," and it's like, "Woohoo! I'm a little yeah." It gives them endorphins and everything, and they get addicted to that. Now you put them on a year-long deployment, you know, to the middle of Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria, somewhere out there, and they can't get those steroids, right? And they can't get all the weightlifting equipment that they want and everything. And now they start shrinking, you know, they're not, or they start because they're used to eating 10,000 calories a day. They continue to eat 10,000 calories a day, but they can't keep up with their workouts, and they start putting on weight. Now they become a weight problem, along with the health problems involved in carrying around all that extra stuff. So if the Army's going to also go over to have these special operations guys tested for this stuff, because they're very motivated to be the best they can be. Honestly, to be the best. These guys want to be the best. You know, they're competitive with each other, all competitive and everything. And if they can find an edge, they'll try to use that edge. But that is counterproductive, because now they're making themselves a liability. All right. And so within right there, the competitiveness of it all starts to destroy you from within, because you invest a lot of money in these soldiers, in their training and everything, and now you got to boot them out because they're taking these steroids. Because the military has a thing; they have like zero tolerance on a lot of this stuff. They're like, they might not kick you out of the military, but you'll be kicked out of the special operations. It won't be allowed in. You'll be stripped of your clearance because you couldn't do what you were told. It's the main thing. Do what you're told. Don't use steroids. So what do you think brought that up in my mind?
Hulk Hogan?
Yeah. It's you know, these guys, they're always, and it's a, their target audience is 10 to 14-year-old boys, right? That's the target audience. And they don't want to tell these kids, because if your hero took this shortcut to get where he's at, is he really a hero? So they want to keep that hero worship in there, and they want to say, no, it was all hard work. Absolutely. And it is hard work, but then when back in the 80s, I think Lyle Elizalde, the NFL football player, he was really known for roid rage and everything. This is before it all became apparent, and he swore up and down it was just all hard work. He didn't use any of that. He didn't use any of that until he was in a wheelchair and couldn't move.
That's a shame.
And then he said, I think it was the steroids, after denying it the whole time. So you see Hulk Hogan at his prime, you know, when he's a little younger. And all of a sudden, there was this big scare because it was killing these guys. It killed a lot of these professional wrestlers, right? You know, the big names, you hear about them, but you don't hear about the little name guys doing this stuff and having issues. And there was that scare hit, and all of a sudden, these guys stopped taking them, and they shrunk by like, on average, like 25 pounds each. Boom. They just, boom. They lost the muscle mass. They became a lot smaller and everything. They're not all big and bulked out anymore. Some of them continued to take it. You know, the other thing is that, like I said, the endorphins from the workouts, if you give that up, if you give out the endorphins you get for adding a millimeter with the bicep, right? You're going to have that withdrawal. You're going to have emotional problems. They said even suicidal ideations on that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I really think that how do you do it? You know, really, how do you do it? Like you said, you know, it's, you know, the joke was it's better to look good than feel good. When the truth is, it's better to feel good. You know, to be inside, you know, you know, but how do you convince this population that this is bad for them? How do you convince them they're going to continue? It's like taking a guy that's got hooked on heroin. You know, breaking their addiction is very difficult. So it's just the same addiction, except it isn't looked on with the same. It does what I say. It doesn't have the same society. The society doesn't look down on it enough to prevent it. All right. You understand?
I do. You know, this reminds me of a little bit similar to that. We used to have to take these classes in professional responsibility. And about 18, 20 years ago, they went into this thing about health and stuff, in addition to like other, anti-discriminatory things, And
Yeah.
we used to go to these classes, and sometimes we'd get these speakers, and there was this one guy. It was very interesting. The guy was a bad alcoholic. Okay. And he was their model because he took treatment. And this guy kind of lived near the Windsor, Canada, Detroit area, And he was very successful. He went for treatment, and he broke the drug and alcohol or whatever it was,
The vicious
abuse.
circle, yeah.
Yeah. And you know what happened? He started gambling because it replaced it. And he ended up getting convicted of stealing multiple monies from his clients and gambling it in Canada. And it was sad,
Yeah.
So I think what we need to do is go at it the whole body wise, treat
Yes.
mentally and physically,
Absolutely. Okay. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about these, the unfortunate effects of looking good rather than feeling good. Right, Paul?
Right.
I think the major time where alcoholism comes up is in DUIs. So you have guys in the Army getting a DUI, and that's a red flag. All right. And usually they get a pass. They get like one pass, and then they're told, straighten out, go to counseling, whatever. And it comes down hard on them. And it's a society thing. And if they just quit drinking, but they switch it off for, let's say, weed, pot, right? Or they switch it off for gambling, or, other, endorphin involving things, playing solitaire. I got, it's hard for me I wake up in the morning and I have my Sudoku on my phone and I play a couple games. And, when I win at the expert level, I'm like, oh, I get those endorphins. That's pretty cool. And I kind of like need that in the morning, the little the little itty bitty rush of winning one of those games. So I'll just play there. You know, I try not to have it affect my my life. You know, I'm not playing Sudoku when I should be fixing fixing a furnace. You know, so but
You know, a couple of things, a little bit off the side topic. You know, I had a case one time that it involved a theft from the Catholic Church. You know, and I was getting jackpotted all the way around by kind of everybody. You know, and significant way into the case, there was a prominent defense attorney, you know, and I bring this up because you're talking about the Sudoku in the morning, you know, and he comes up to me and he says, you know, the judge and I own a house together. I go, oh, uh, when when were you going to tell me this? And shouldn't he have told me this, you know? So I went to my bosses, you know, and I said, hey, you know, Judge X, you know, owns a house with the defense attorney. Well, how'd you find out? Well, the defense attorney just told me. They go, well, you need to talk to the judge, you know, and I said, oh, okay. So you know, the judge was an unusual guy to say the least, but he had a target up in his chambers, and it was like kind of a turf target, and he wouldn't come out on the bench, say until he hit it with one of those kind of hard rubber golf balls about 100 times. So he got to work, you know, he's the judge, and he's hitting the ball 100 times, and he has to hit the target all 100 times, or he'd start over again, you know. So we're invited to the back, you know, and he says, you know, I'm standing there, and I'm nowhere near the target, and you know, he hits me with one of the balls. It wasn't an accident, you know. And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Burvid. Did I hurt you?" I go, "No, no, no. Can I see your club for a minute?" And then he goes, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm ready to go out now." I said, "Well, obviously you didn't hit it 100 times, and you missed it when you hit me." And he said, "No." But anyway, so they get into this pattern. But you know what I was thinking of in the last segment? Do you remember the old guy that used to run on Pulaski with the bandana on his head and the shorts and the walking stick? He used to run from, I don't know where, how far north, but I always used to see him on 71st and Pulaski, climbing up the overpass, going all the way down to like 83rd. Do you ever remember seeing that guy?
I don't. I'm sorry to say I don't
Well,
remember that.
I used to see this guy because when I would go to school, you know, I would see him. And then when I'd go to work, I'd see the guy, and I'd always beep to the guy, you know, and and, you know, it reminded me, he was, you know, I was 20 and he was maybe 70 at the time. And the guy had the fortitude and he wasn't a fast runner, but, you know, he ran. And he kept up and he ran rain or shine. You know, I saw him pretty much every day when I was going to school and then when I was going to work. And he ran summer and winter, you know, not in the snow. And it's just something to do. Is, you know, you don't have to do a lot, okay? You just have to do it and do it consistently to where it and there's nothing better than running outdoors or walking outdoors and looking at nature, because you know, when you're working, you know, when you're a
Yeah.
working guy, you don't get to see the robin in the tree, or the, you know, or the chipmunk in the field, or even the squirrel. You're constantly, you're lucky if you get out for lunch, or you're lucky if you do something putting a light pole up. But it's an important thing because you're getting exercise, but physically your mind is in another place. You're appreciating nature, you're getting fresh air, you're getting sun, and 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 that's the whole component. You want to do it mind and body, and you're planning your route, but maybe you're thinking of something. And it's very actually therapeutic when you do it that way, as opposed to sitting in a gym taking steroids and
That
doing 134 sets. You know what
that's
I'm saying?
yeah, and that it it I when I deployed, I was with the 10th group, 10th Special Forces group, out in Fort Carson, Colorado, and I really didn't have anything to do when I wasn't, after my work day. So I would go to the gym and I would work out, and there's a heavy bag there, and I would spend 45 minutes beating on that heavy bag. I was getting rid of a lot of angst, right? And I was working out, and I was bulking up. I was getting in good shape, and then they locked me out of the heavy bag room. Wouldn't let me back in. I was scaring the Special Forces guys. But the thing, all right, so you remember President Nixon?
Yes,
He instituted the Presidential Fitness Award.
he did.
He did.
About 1969 or 70.
So that was for kids in grammar school, and you can earn this little patch. It was pretty cool, right? And that was back when I went to private grammar school, but we had a gym class. Like, I don't know if it was like once or twice a week or something. We'd be in gym class. The big thing was floor hockey. We were all violent little kids back then. Floor hockey was the thing. But, we had that physical fitness in the school. We had a way to burn off some energy, to learn about sports, to learn a little bit about fitness. As education, and this is with the military too, as education started to squeeze the money for other reasons, all right? For other reasons, out of that, they said, "Oh, it's too expensive. We need to cut something out. And the first thing that goes is sports, right? First thing that goes is gym. What are the kids learning in gym? Well, they're learning how to get along with each other. They're learning teamwork. They're learning, how to use their bodies and everything, and a little stuff. It's great, right? I had a big disagreement though, because like with the public schools, and the main problem, I have issues with the CTU, all right? I have issues with the Chicago public schools. I think they're the biggest scam in the history of humanity. To talk about everything else, CPS is the biggest scam in the history of humanity. In that now they want to cut shop classes out. They want to cut this out. Everyone's fighting for their own. And of course, people are fighting to keep the sports in when they're talking about cutting like history classes or cutting constitutional classes, the social science classes, but they're all fighting like mad to keep the football program in place, to keep the football, because my kid's going to play NFL and I'm sending them to a public school and I don't want to pay them to go to private school. But they have leagues in the park district. But oh no, that's not the same. Well, take your kid to the park district, buy him I don't want to buy the equipment either. I don't want to have to take him to park district after school. He should be doing this stuff. The school should take care of it. And they're very strong on those sports teams, right? Which is not a bad thing, except the only kids that are getting physical fitness are the kids on the sports teams. No one else has to do it. So none of the other kids, they're like couch potatoes. They got their phone and everything. And all the other kids are the kids that can play, right? The best kids, sometimes they're not even in the school district because they recruit them in for reasons other than education, right? And so these kids can't play. They may want to play, but they're not good enough. So they're off to the sidelines. Those are the ones that have to go to the park district and play in those leagues because they want to do it, right? And the same, there needs to be, on our education level again, there needs to be that physical fitness and health need to be part of the curriculum. And if you can't teach a kid to count to 10 in his first year of kindergarten, then those teachers should be fired. Right? And the board should be fired. And the principal should be fired. And get people that can teach them. It's like, so we have the problem that not only do we have a pressure on people to look good rather to feel good, and then we give them shortcuts to this, like Ozempic, right? That's the fat weight drug, right? To lose fat. And I've seen people, they've lost a lot of weight on it, but no one has done a study 20 years down the line.
Yeah, no one knows the long-term effects of it. And
now all of a sudden when the pharmaceutical companies has pushed this, and they're the ones pushing it, right? They're out there. If you want a person to buy your product, then you're going to be off to the side, not just advertising your product, but you're going to have a PSYOP campaign of fat shaming, right? And you're going to have this campaign of be one of the beautiful people, do this and everything else, and all these advertisements on there. But you don't see. Why don't you just get rid of the junk food? Because you can't do that either. Because oh my God, it's such a vicious circle. It's so that I mentioned President Nixon with the health thing. That was pretty cool, but he's long gone and dead, right? He's dead, long gone. He had his issues on there. But what I'm really glad for is our current, Secretary of Health and Human Services?
The Kennedy?
Yeah. Because I pretty much agree with a lot he says, And a lot of people didn't like that. I think he's the right person in the right place. And you can make him.
When you're talking about that, it does, but it kind of goes both ways. When I was in high school, we had this history teacher, and he was a wonderful man. Okay, and he was also, and the one regret I have, he was in charge of the golf team. And had I known then, the secret, I would have actually got in on it. And it turns out, I was like a novice golfer, but I was pretty good at it. And I had about a skin cancer. And the doctor kind of said, don't be doing a lot of outdoor prolonged activities. But it came to pass one time. We were at a golf outing, and I actually was working felony review, so I was going to do the whole outing and then go to work, And we had just finished the 9th hole, and I was golfing with 2 judges. Okay. So there was another 9 to go, and my score was 35. Okay, and I looked at the score. I looked at the score, and I said, I could kind of peter out at the end, but I don't think I'm going to. And I said, I'm walking off. And they go, are you crazy? I said, yeah, and if I get something like 70, 72, I'm gonna be going out all the time, and that's not good.
That's the same thing with these guys. Like I said, add an extra millimeter to your biceps, and they're going to be doing it all the time because it gives them the endorphins. And maybe you saw a danger to yourself there. Yeah. But
But getting back to this teacher, he was in charge, and everybody on the team got a Chick Evans scholarship of some sort, and that was wonderful. And they got to go to Northwestern, and he was a regular history teacher, but he was the golf instructor, and he really looked out for the students, and a lot of them went to Northwestern on that scholarship, and they did very well. So there, and I would hate to see, like you say, I would hate to see good programs that get results and produce good people get damaged, all for, like you said, for like just the football program. And then another thing that they also take away is the music program.
yeah,
And they take away we need a balance of everything. Like in the ancient times, there were the arts, which we have those antiquities still to this day. And we have the sports, and the Olympics, and then we have the modern Olympics, and himself, General Patton, competed, I believe, in two of them. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, you just can't focus on one thing. We shouldn't be a country of rollerball. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
We should be a country of some people that play sports, some people that do art, some people that play music. We should balance it out, because it makes us a better person. It makes us a better country, and it makes us more culturally attuned to where people from all walks of life, every race, every nationality, can participate and have something good come out of it.
Yeah, the nice even about, like, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this one. I got to say it because before the break, so people call in. So I was going to a Walgreens to hit the ATM in there, and on my way in, this kid who shouldn't be having a meltdown. He looked like he was 6 or 7. All right, so he shouldn't be having a toddler meltdown. But he was outside and he was doing one of those fake, really annoying whines, and his babysitter, big sister, or mama couldn't stop him. So I looked at her and I says, "Listen, either you're beating that kid too much or not enough. Find a happy medium."
That's a good one.
But the sports, where the problem comes is if you have one guy, right, you're going to a golf. In golfing, it's a skill, right? It's a good skill set. People are athletic, but they have the knack, like the magical hands, like a surgeon. They're not necessarily the strongest. You don't have to be the strongest. If you have long arms, a tall body, you got a good swing, you don't need the power like a power hitter in baseball might need, right? Hitting a 96-mile-an-hour fastball with the bat and keeping your wrist straight so it doesn't break your arms off, right? You get a good swing. The power's at the end of the stick. You get the good swing, and it goes far. Now all of a sudden you get some guy in there that he is just super superior to everyone else because he had, let's say, science fiction wise, he has bionics, right? He had bionic arms, and suddenly he's superior to everyone else. Right? He sacrificed his arms to have bionic arms to golf in a competition. Right? And he wins all the time. No one could beat him with natural arms. No one. Who wants to go up against that guy for a bet or anything? Right? Is it an unfair advantage? Well, yeah, I think it is, because he had the money to get bionic arms, and boom, now he's beating everyone, because the PGA, I don't think has. They may have, they may have a rule against bionic arms. That's futuristic, and I maybe it's hyperbole, but when you get these guys on steroids, right? On steroids, and they're not afraid, they're looking for the short-term gains, and they're like, well, the big thing, YOLO, you only live once, right? And that's what YOLO, until they hit their 40s and their body's falling apart and they're in a wheelchair and they're like, oh my God, I have to be taken care of now. And they're going to live another 10 years in misery. And the first thing they're going to tell you is, I wish I hadn't taken those steroids. Well, too bad, dude. And if he doesn't have insurance, what do you do? What do you do with him?
Well done up, yeah.
How does he pay for his medical bills? Well,
we're paying for it.
We're paying for it. It's raising our rates. It's like no one's taking him in a wheelchair and rolling him into the deep end of the pool and going, YOLO, dude. And that's where it becomes a point where it's an unfair advantage, because you're a reasonable person and you're saying, I care about my health. And you have to combat an unreasonable person. You have to compete with an unreasonable person who takes every single advantage no matter what. Well, you're never going to win in that case until you both turn 40. And then, hey, want to have that foot race again? Oh, you can't walk. But people don't look at it that way. But again, it's not a no victim crime, because we're paying for it. Everyone is paying for it, not only in higher medical, right, but also in less available treatment. All right, so when we come back for the second half of the Chief Guard of the Republic, make sure you call in at 847-931-1410. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at Silink.net. That's Papa, Sierra, Yankee, Lima, India, November, Kilo, dot, November, Echo, Tango. Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security. I'm not a big, I would rather golf than watch golf on TV. All right? So I'm not a big sports guy, although Matt's telling me that they're going to pick up the Bears here. So we're going to have the Bears on the radio. I don't think, Bears. Yeah, they might have a Saturday. Will we get preempted if the Bears are playing on a Saturday afternoon?
I'd have to double check.
And we might get preempted. Or we could do it live. We could get tickets at Soldiers Field and do live from Soldiers Field.
We could do it from the press box up there.
Yeah. I can make up press badges for us.
Yeah.
See if they let us in. I think we could talk our way through. Anyways, so the Chicago Sports Journal, all right, at chisportsjournal.com. So CHISPORTSJOURNAL, all one word, chisportsjournal.com. All right, that's run by Frank Calantanio. All right, he also does a printed thing. So if you're interested in sports, and especially local sports, like our what's that out here in Elgin, or the Schaumburg
Boomers.
Schaumburg Boomers, and we got the Chicago Dogs out in Rosemont. Right?
Go Dogs. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs, yeah. You could pick up, pick up one of the papers if you see it. It's called the Chicago Sports Journal. You call them at 708-370-3401. That's 708-370-3401 if you want to advertise. Their next issue is going to be coming out on the 27th of August, 2025. So that's coming up soon. So if you want to get an advertisement in there for your sports events and be listed in a newspaper that's set out there. It's kind of like the Reader, only for sports. So, they're not charging people for it. You just pick it up. All right, so it's a great thing. I talked to Frank. He was going to help. He's going to help me out on my daughter's wrestling show, which is the Ultimate Combat Gauntlet, UCG, Ultimate Combat Gauntlet. So you could see them on the YouTube channel, Ultimate Combat Gauntlet, or you could check out all their other social media at Ultimate Combat Gauntlet, or hashtag Ultimate Combat Gauntlet. So,
speaking of sports,
yes,
and you need to think about this a little bit, but I heard this said before, and I think it's true. Do you know who one of the greatest athletes of the last 55 years was?
Athlete. So an athletic guy. I have to say Bruce Jenner.
No, I'm.
Is he more than 50 years ago? He's an athlete. He won the decathlon.
No, think about it. One of the greatest athletes of all times in the last 55 years. You know who it was?
No, I don't. Like I said, I don't. Yogi, what?
Secretariat, the horse.
Okay, Secretariat. All right. But was Secretariat ridden by the same jockey all the time?
Well, that's why it might have been ridden by different jockeys. He was the one that was winning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I had a good friend, right? I probably would have got suspended from the police department if they knew that I associated with him, because he was a convicted felon. He had gone to prison for armed robbery, and he had found Jesus in prison, and he had truly found Jesus. All right, the guy was a true believer, and you just had to talk to him a little bit, and you knew him, and he was a hardcore, kind of a low-level mobster guy originally, and he knew all about the horses. So I gave him like $50 because he was going to the track, and I says, "Hey, can you add this into your bets and give me a percentage of it?" Dude parlayed my $50 into 500 in one sitting at the track.
Wow!
Because he knew track conditions, what the track conditions were going to be like. Then he knew which jockeys were riding the horses and which horses were better under track conditions, and he knew how to bet. Yeah, So how many? I don't know, how many did Secretariat win? Triple? Did they win more than one triple crown?
Yeah.
Yeah. The triple is you have to win those big 3 horse races, not just win 2 of them. You got to win all 3 of them.
Right.
Yeah. And but they do test those horses. So if you invest, honestly, millions of dollars into a horse, all right, one of the things you're going to do with that horse, be it stallion or mare, right? If that horse is a winner, right? If it's winning, if it's got good genetics in it, that horse is going to be worth a lot more in stud or in breeding, right? In foaling, right? So it's going to have the genetics there. Those so you don't want to give the horse any steroids that are going to affect its ability to breed, or it's going to disrupt its genetics or anything. So yeah, not only are they going to test the horse to see that it hasn't been doped, but it's a bad thing to mess with your future earnings just to win one race. So you win one race and you get some money out of that, the one race, and you get some advertising and sponsorships. But when that horse is done, and they're going to be done pretty quick, because the younger horses are going to after a while, they'll just outrun them. And it's just because of age. You're still going to have that investment because one of the prodigy of that horse is probably going to beat it in the next race, and that's worth money, right? So you're looking at a professional athlete out there that starts doping, right, to get the advantage and everything. And if he does have any prodigy, is that prodigy going to be even close to his ability, because that prodigy isn't going to dope themselves up to get into like the NFL or something like that. So they just kind of, are ham and eggers.
He was Secretariat was named by Sports Illustrated as the 17th on their list of 40 greatest sports figures in the past 40 years. And in 1999, ESPN listed him as like number 35th of the 100 greatest athletes in the 20th century. So he's also in some other, he's like the only animal in a lot of sports Hall of Fame. So yeah, I'm on Team Secretariat.
Well, yeah. So does it say how many prodigy Secretariat had, and how? Just if you got the phone, can you run and see how much Secretariat brought for studying fees?
Okay.
Oh, we got a call. While you look that up, we'll take a call. Who's on the air?
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, it's Cleveland Dennis.
Hey, Cleveland Dennis.
Yeah, I like the show.
Thank you.
About Sammy Sosa. We gotta think about Sammy Sosa in about 20 years or less. Because I relate. I tried to text it across on the YouTube, but bounced. I don't know.
Did I miss you?
Anyhow, I don't know. I'll state it. My sister told me last week her husband had been married for like 50 years, 35, I don't know, something like that. Anyhow, husband's 72. He pretty sure he was taking steroids back in 75 before they got married. And now today, his health plummeted. He's got all these weird situations occurring, and that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. Hulk Hogan lived to 71 years old. My dad, who I know didn't take steroids, right? But when he came out of the military, he was 190 pounds of rock solid muscle, 6'1", 190 pounds, right? And he didn't bulk up anymore, but he was rock solid muscle, because I guess he wasn't the most well-behaved of soldiers. And back in the 50s, if you weren't well-behaved, they did, it's like Stripes, where Bill Murray's just doing constant push-ups. So my dad chain smoked, and he had ulcers and everything else from, anxiety, all this other stuff. And he lived to 72, and they had taken a lung out, and he was still smoking. So he outlived Hulk Hogan, right? Who exercised every day, had enough money to buy the best food, right? Not eating not eating chicken nuggets and stuff, and macaroni and cheese like he did with feeding 5 kids, the family and everything. And here this guy lives to 71. Now, maybe he was predisposed to it, but I would have, if I was laying money, if I was in heaven and I went and I was laying money on what was the direct result of Hulk Hogan only living to 71 years old, I'd have to say steroids. Now, if someone doesn't like that, call in. That's my belief. I'm not saying it for a fact. Yeah,
I'm kind of agreeing with you. I like what you said about your dad. That's about my dad out of service in 46. But, he was about 6'1", about 185. And he made it a long time, like my mother. But it's crazy how people think, and I've seen them recently when I was over there downtown Elgin at the high school reunion a few weeks ago, that people come in and they're all bulked up, and I just, geez, what happened? But that's their choice, I guess. And it's really all I got today. I like the story about the Secretariat.
Yeah.
So true all about that. Yeah. And I used to go over to the racetrack down over there in near Crete. It was just the buggies. I learned something there. It's all about the jockey. It's all about the jockey there. But anyhow, that's all I got, guys. Love the show.
So one of our listeners, Zagloba, right? And
Yeah,
know.
I'm watching it. I just thanked him. He said that he got between 30 and 60 million, and 600 of his offspring, including 347 registered thoroughbreds.
Right. So Zagloba, I know that, and that's a very famous character. I know Zagloba's first and middle name, Jan Onufri Zagloba. All right. I have a suspicion I know who Zagloba is, though. So I'm glad he's listening. But yeah, so that's like 30 to 60 million. So are you going to risk 30 to 60 million in future profits by injecting the horse with steroids that might make it impotent or infertile? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. It's like buying a fine, a nice normal sedan. You expect to have it for 15 years, and you put jet fuel in it, and you blow the cylinder heads off. It's like, well, you only drive it for a year because you want it to go a little faster with jet fuel. That's one of those parables. There was a man once, and he bought a nice regular sedan, and he expected to keep it for 20 years, but then one day he wanted his normal sedan to go a little faster, so he filled it with jet fuel and he blew the cylinder heads off of it. And then he didn't have his car anymore. But he went a little faster once.
Mm-hmm.
For a short period of time, you're at the top of the game, and then you got to worry about the rest of your life. And I think to bring this all together with the nation, because this is like a veteran shout-outs thing. If any veterans out there knew of guys that got booted for steroids, give a call in and let me know. I don't want to know their names. I have seen guys in the military that were really bulked out, but their whole life was, you go to your PT session in the morning, you do your job for like 8 hours, and then they spend the rest of their afternoon working out because their PT session in the morning wasn't nearly enough for them, and they just work out, and they're just drinking the protein shakes, eating as much food as they could get, having like just chunks of chicken, the breast meat chicken. They eat like 3 or 4 chickens for lunch. These guys were really, that was their life. They bulked up. But they had trouble with the run. But there's a point, they're not, unless they get a physical fitness waiver, like for bad knees or a broken leg, they still have to do the run at the same pace that everyone else does. It's a little harder for a guy that bulky to do it at a young age, to be able to do 2 miles in 13 minutes. Hulk Hogan was a villain, not because of his... Okay, we got Zagloba here on the YouTube thing. Hulk Hogan was a villain, not because of his politics nor his history of self-aggrandized lying, but because he went on TV and told children that they didn't need steroids to get his physique. Yeah, okay, so... No, I disagree with that as Hulk Hogan being a villain. I says, even though I would say that's not a villain, but that's hypocritical, all right? It's hypocritical because I've seen guys that bulked out without the steroids, all right? They're bulked out without steroids. That's their size and everything. And you have to accept your body type the way it is, all right? If you're not 6'4", if you're 6 foot, you could get to 6'4". It requires a lot of painful surgeries where they actually break your bones and kind of stretch it out and let your bones grow together and grow together. They do this for kids with these disorders and everything. So it is possible that you could get to 6'4" if you're like 25 years old and you're 6'1", or 6 foot. If you're 25 years old and 6 foot, that's it. You ain't going any higher, right? So no, you can't get to 6'4", with steroids, without steroids. But to get the cut shape, to get the muscles and everything, it's harder work. The steroids are a shortcut. All right. So he's never going to say, Hulk Hogan would have never told kids, well, I did it with a shortcut, because yes, he's some people might have considered him a villain, or what they call in the wrestling world, they have baby faces, which are the good guys. You're a baby face, right? And then they have heels. Heels are the bad guys. So Hulk Hogan had a long, illustrious career, and he went from baby face to heel to baby face to heel. Some guys were always a heel. Some guys were always baby faces, always the good guy. I think the good guys are a little boring. I kind of like the heels better. But he was, a lot of young kids, right, idolized him, hero worshipped him. And if he told them he used steroids, that's not, if Hulk Hogan came out in the open and said, I got this wrestling physique by using steroids, I don't think he would have been the hero worship guy anymore, because that's like cheating. Everyone considered that cheating. So God bless him. He passed away. He found Jesus before he passed away.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So and it is, hopefully I leave as much of a legacy as he did in other ways. And if you want to know a little bit about my legacy, then read one of my books. You can find it on scilink.net. Some of my 13 novels out there. So I'm working on a sequel to give my 14th novel. But right now I only got 13 on there. These are 2 military ones, Under Platoon and Rumble, which is kind of a spoof on Rambo. The story is, I was in Haiti and I started writing this in like 94. And it just sat there for a while. Life got by me. And I says, well, I wrote a novel, and I got the bug for writing. And I says, well, I got this one novel that I had started a long time ago. And I looked all through, because every time one of my hard drives or I was upgrading a computer, I always copied all the files, and I had a big, massive, confusing thing of files. And I found the old, my old half-written script, and I worked on it. And so I was wondering, because I went down there as a reservist. They sent a lot of reservists, National Guard guys overseas, which they hadn't been doing for a while. And I wondered, what would a character like Rambo do if he got activated to go overseas, not to be the individual lone wolf, right? But to be just a member of a regular reserve or National Guard unit, regular guys, off the street. And he's got to be one of them. How would it work out? So it's kind of a spoof there. It's got a good plot. It's got bad guys. It's got good guys. And, of course, they're dealing with the drug problem. They're trying to stop a drug smuggling. So you recognize the names of some of the characters, like, of course, Rambo, General Troutman General Bassman instead of Troutman. Well, he was a colonel. I made him. So not to give you any spoilers, but it's got a good plot, good story, good action. All right, and you got any final words for us, Paul?
No, just everybody enjoy the summer. And what they said in the old song, sometimes life comes at you fast, and you got to smell the roses. So just take your time, smell the roses, enjoy yourself, and enjoy the summer. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Paul. See you next week.
See you next week.